Chairman. Good morning, Mr. Secretary. This is the 20th year that I've had the honor to serve on the Foreign Affairs Committee. I've chaired the Middle East Committee, I've chaired the Asian Pacific Committee, and I've had the opportunity to listen to and to question a number of a number of our Secretaries of State, from Warren Christopher to Madeleine Albright to Colin Powell to Condoleezza Rice to Hillary Clinton to yourself in the past and again here today. Now, this administration has less than a year to go, so what I'd like to do is to ask you to address some of the things which many would argue haven't gone so well, and what we can learn from these things and hopefully avoid repeating in the future. And as you know, I've got limited time, and I have several questions, so I'd ask that you keep your answers reasonably succinct because I would try to avoid interrupt you. First, you've already been asked about the Iran deal. But I'd like to go back before the deal and ask this, and I realize, of course, that Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State and not yourself, so I'm not blaming you. But I would ask this question. Was not aiding the students and the pro-democracy reformers in the Iranian Green Movement a mistake?
Well, I think my memory is that President Obama spoke out in support of, and we suffered a lot of criticism from Iran. In fact, this is one of the hurdles we had to get over in our negotiation. They believed that we were not only supportive, but even responsible for it.
Now that's not my recollection. These young pro-democracy folks pleaded for our help, pleaded for it, and they got exactly nothing from this administration. President Obama essentially, if you go back and look at what he said at the time, he took the side, I would argue, of the repressive mullahs of Iran over its freedom-seeking people. I think most people who were looking at the time would say it was shameful what happened. Let me move on. In retrospect, was it a mistake to pull all U.S. troops out of Iraq?
I believe that this has been badly misinterpreted because there was no contemplation. First of all, the agreement itself was made by President Bush to draw the troops out. What President Obama tried to do was negotiate with Maliki, with Prime Minister Maliki, a remainder that would stay. And they were non-combat troops. Everybody needs to focus on that. There were no combat troops that were going to stay there. So even if they had stayed, that would not have made a difference with respect to what was happening, because Prime Minister Maliki was turning the Army into his own personal, private, sectarian enterprise. And that's the principal reason. Let me just finish.
I think next to the Iran deal, I would argue that it was this administration's greatest mistake, and it led, I think, directly to the rise of ISIS. Let me ask this. How did this administration so misread Putin? Now, to be fair, President Bush did too. He famously looked into Putin's eyes, believing that he'd got a sense of his soul. But let's face it, Putin's been undermining U.S. policy at every turn. Why did this administration not see that coming? Why did it let it happen?
Well, I don't think that anybody could predict what an unpredictable set of choices might produce. The bottom line is that at the time, a number of other things happened which had an impact on Putin's perception of what was going on.
Let me just, I'm almost out of time. Just let me comment on your comment. It seems to me that from the start of this administration, from Hillary's famous pressing of the reset button, that we've been played like chumps by Putin. This administration scrapped the missile defense program with our allies, Poland and the Czech Republic, to placate Putin. And what did we get? He invaded and annexed Crimea, started a war in eastern Ukraine, which is ongoing. Shoots down a civilian airliner and, of course, denies it. His allies did that. Threatens the NATO alliance, props up Assad in Syria, harbors the treasonous Edward Snowden, and on and on. I'd argue that this administration's policy with respect to Russia has been feckless. And unfortunately, I'm out of time, so I'm going to have to leave it there.